You know what's really fascinating? While you're busy trying to figure out if he's interested, he's already reading you like a book you didn't even know was open. And the things he's noticing, they're not what you think. Here's the thing. Avoidant men pick up on 4 specific behaviors that make them pull back instantly. And chances are, you have no idea you're even doing them. Stay with me because number 3 is the one that sabotages almost every connection before it even starts. So let's talk about what's really happening beneath the surface. Because understanding this changes everything about how you show up in relationships. And trust me, once you see these 4 things clearly, you'll never approach dating the same way again. The first thing avoidants notice about you is your reaction to their silence. Now, here's what most people don't understand. When an avoidant goes quiet, it's not a test. It's not a game. It's actually their nervous system trying to regulate itself. But what happens? You panic. You send the follow-up text, then another, then maybe a casual meme to seem lighthearted. And with every message, he's not thinking you're caring or interested. He's feeling something else entirely. He's feeling crowded. See, avoidants have this internal alarm system that goes off when they sense someone needs them too much. And your reaction to silence? It tells him everything about how much space he'll have in this relationship. Now, I'm not saying his silence is okay or that you should accept breadcrumbs, but understanding what he notices gives you power. When you can sit with his silence without making it mean something catastrophic about you or the relationship, something shifts. You're no longer handing him evidence that you'll be too much. You're showing him something he rarely sees. Someone who's okay without constant reassurance. And that's magnetic to an avoidant because it signals safety. It signals that you won't need him to be something he's not ready to be. The second thing he notices is how quickly you try to define the relationship. Look, I know the uncertainty is torture. You want to know where you stand. You want labels. You want clarity. That's completely normal. But here's what's happening in his mind. Every time you bring up the "what are we" conversation too early, he hears something different than what you're saying. You're saying, "I want to know if this is going somewhere." He's hearing, "I need something from you right now that you're not ready to give." And that feeling of not being enough, it makes him retreat. Avoidants already have this deep wiring that tells them they'll disappoint people, that they can't meet expectations. So when you push for definition before he's ready, you're activating his biggest fear. Now again, I'm not saying you should wait around forever, but timing matters. What he's noticing is whether you can enjoy the connection for what it is right now without needing to lock it down immediately. Can you be present with him without needing a guarantee? Because if you can, he starts to relax. And when an avoidant relaxes, that's when he actually starts moving closer. But if he senses that you need a commitment to feel secure, he'll keep his distance. Because to him, that need feels like pressure. And pressure makes him run. The third thing avoidants notice, and this is the big one, is how much you need them to make you feel worthy. This is subtle. You might not even realize you're doing it, but he notices. He notices when you light up a little too much at his compliments, when you dim a little when he doesn't text back right away, when your mood seems dependent on his attention. And here's the brutal truth. That need, it repels him. Not because he's cruel, but because it puts him in a position he doesn't want to be in. It makes him responsible for your emotional state. And avoidants don't want that job. They've spent their whole lives learning that people will need things from them they can't provide. So when they see you looking to them for validation, for worth, for proof that you're enough, they instinctively back away. But when you show up full, when your happiness doesn't hinge on his response time or his mood or his level of interest, everything changes. He notices that. He notices that you're good whether he's around or not. And counterintuitively, that makes him want to be around more. Because suddenly, being with you isn't a weight, it's a choice. And avoidants crave relationships that feel like freedom, not obligation. So the less you need him to complete you, the more drawn in he becomes. Now, before we get to number 4, I need your help with something. If you're getting value from this, do me a favor. Type the word notice in the comments right now. Just that one word, notice. It helps me know this is resonating. And honestly, we're working toward 2,000 subscribers and we're not close yet. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that button. It makes a real difference. All right, let's keep going. The 4th thing avoidants notice about you is whether you have a life outside of them. And I mean a real life. Not a life you're pretending to have to play it cool. He can tell the difference. Avoidants are observers. They're paying attention to whether you have friends you see regularly, hobbies you're genuinely excited about, goals you're working toward that have nothing to do with finding a relationship. And when they see that you do, it does something to them. It takes the pressure off. See, one of the biggest fears an avoidant has is that if he gets close to you, you'll make him your whole world. That your happiness will become his responsibility. That he'll have to be everything for you. And that thought is suffocating to him. But when he sees that you've got your own thing going, that you're not sitting around waiting for him to text, that you've got fulfillment from multiple sources, he can breathe. He can actually consider getting closer because he knows that closeness won't mean losing himself. Now, here's the tricky part. You can't fake this. If you're posting pictures with friends just to show him you're busy, he'll sense the performance. If you're picking up hobbies just to seem less available, it won't land the same way. What he's really noticing is whether your life has meaning and fullness independent of him. And if it does, you become infinitely more attractive. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're genuinely hard to get. There's a difference. One is strategy, the other is reality. And avoidance can smell strategy from a mile away. So let's zoom out for a second. Why does all of this matter? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. You can't make an avoidant feel safe by chasing them. You can't logic them into being ready for a relationship. You can't convince them you're worth it. But what you can do is stop doing the things that activate their fear. And that starts with awareness. Most people move through relationships completely unaware of the signals they're sending. They think they're just being caring or interested or invested. And they are, but they're also telegraphing need. They're telegraphing anxiety. They're telegraphing that their emotional stability is wrapped up in someone else's behavior. And for an avoidant, that's the biggest red flag there is. So when you become aware of these 4 things, you get a choice. You can either keep doing them and keep getting the same results, or you can shift. Not to manipulate him, not to trick him into committing, but to genuinely become the kind of person who doesn't need someone else to feel whole. Let's talk about what that actually looks like in practice. Because awareness without action doesn't change anything. When he goes silent, instead of spiraling into what did I do wrong, you remind yourself that his silence isn't about you. You go do something that fills you up. You call a friend. You work on a project. You go for a walk. You let him have his space without making it a referendum on your worth. And here's what's wild. When you do that, when you genuinely give him space without resentment or fear, he often comes back faster. Not always, but often. Because he doesn't feel that energetic pull of your anxiety. He gets to miss you, and avoidance needs space to miss you. When it comes to defining the relationship, you flip the script. Instead of needing to know where it's going, you start asking yourself if this is even where you want to go. You start evaluating whether his pace works for you, whether the connection feels good as it is, and if it doesn't, you're willing to walk. Not as a tactic, but as self-respect. And guess what he notices? He notices that you're not just trying to lock him down, you're deciding if he's worth your time. That shift in energy is powerful. It moves you from chasing to choosing, and avoidants respect that. When it comes to needing him for validation, this is the deep work. This is where you have to get radically, uncomfortably honest with yourself. Not the surface level honest where you admit you like his attention. The real honest. The kind where you sit with yourself in the quiet and ask the hard questions. Are you looking to him to prove you're lovable? Are you using his attention as a metric for your worth? Are you measuring your value by how quickly he texts back? By whether he chooses to stay? By the way his eyes light up when he sees you? If you are, no judgment, no shame. Most of us have done exactly this. Most of us learned somewhere along the way, from a parent who was inconsistent, from a relationship that conditioned us to work for love, from a childhood where we had to earn our place, that our worth was something that had to be confirmed by someone else. And so we go searching for that confirmation in the people we date. We hand them the pen and say, "Here, write my value for me. Tell me I'm enough. Tell me I'm worth choosing." And when they pull away, we don't just feel lonely, we feel worthless. Because we've outsourced something that was always supposed to live inside us. But it's time to rewire that. And I want to be clear, rewiring is not a weekend project. It's not a journaling prompt you do once and check off a list. It's a daily, intentional practice of choosing yourself when everything in you wants to look outward for reassurance. It starts with building evidence for yourself that has nothing to do with him. Accomplish something that makes you proud, not something that makes him notice you. Not something that makes you more attractive or more impressive or more worth keeping. Something that you do purely for yourself. A goal you set and reach, a skill you build, a creative project you finish, a hard conversation you have, a boundary you hold. Because every time you do something that confirms your own capability, your own worth, your own resilience, you are laying one more brick in the foundation of self-validation. And over time, that foundation becomes unshakable. Spend time with people who see you, not people who tolerate you, not people who keep you around when it's convenient. People who genuinely, actively, consistently see who you are and celebrate it. People who ask about your life and actually listen. People who show up when things are hard. People whose love doesn't feel like a puzzle you have to solve. Because here's what happens when you surround yourself with that kind of love. You start to recalibrate. You start to remember what it feels like to be chosen clearly, without ambiguity, without chasing. And that recalibration makes it much harder to accept anything less. Reconnect with the parts of yourself you've neglected. Because when we get deep into an anxious attachment cycle, we lose pieces of ourselves. The hobbies we stopped doing because we were waiting for a text back. The friendships we let drift because we were too consumed by him. The ambitions we put on the back burner because all of our emotional energy was being funneled into one person. Reclaim those parts. Go back to the things that made you feel alive before he was in the picture. Because those things, they belong to you. And when you're actively living as a full person, not a person waiting to be completed by someone else, everything changes. And as you do all of that, you'll notice something shift. His attention stops feeling like oxygen. It starts feeling like a bonus. And that distinction is everything. When someone's attention feels like oxygen, you'll do anything to get it. You'll shrink, you'll perform, you'll tie yourself in knots trying to be exactly what you think they need. But when it feels like a bonus, you can receive it with warmth instead of desperation. You can appreciate it without being consumed by it. And that's when you know you're operating from a full place. That's when you stop repelling avoidance, not by becoming someone different, but by becoming someone who doesn't need them to be anything in particular to feel okay. And ironically, that's also when you start attracting people who are actually capable of meeting you, or at the very least, you stop tolerating people who can't show up for you, because you finally know in your bones that you deserve more than that. And finally, building a life outside of him, not as a strategy, not as a technique to seem more attractive or more mysterious. This isn't about being busy for the sake of looking busy. It's about genuinely, wholeheartedly investing in your own growth, your own joy, your own purpose. It's about rebuilding your identity outside of this dynamic. It's about remembering, in a real, felt way, not just intellectually, that you were a whole person before he came along. You had a life. You had dreams. You had things that lit you up, and things that made you laugh, and things that made you feel deeply, richly alive. And here's the truth that so many of us forget when we get caught up in someone who runs hot and cold. You will be a whole person if he leaves. You will survive the withdrawal. You will find your footing. You will come back to yourself. When you live from that place, everything shifts. You stop over-functioning in relationships. You stop doing the emotional labor for two people while they do the labor for half a person. You stop trying to convince people to choose you because you've already chosen yourself so clearly that you simply don't have the bandwidth to chase someone who's not meeting you halfway. You start living in a way that's so full and rich and genuinely yours that anyone who wants access to your life has to rise to meet you. They have to show up. They have to be present. They have to bring something real. And the ones who can't, the ones who won't, they fall away naturally. Not because you pushed them away in anger or built walls to protect yourself, but because there's simply no space for half-hearted effort in a full life. A full life doesn't create a vacuum for people who are emotionally unavailable. It requires more. And only the people who are capable of more will stay. Now I want to address something important, and I want to say it clearly so there's no confusion. None of this is about changing yourself to keep an avoidant interested. None of it is about performing security to trick someone into staying. If you're twisting yourself into knots, trying to become the version of yourself that won't scare him away, that's not the point. That is, in fact, the opposite of the point. Because the moment you start modifying who you are to accommodate someone's avoidance, you've already lost yourself. And losing yourself is always a higher cost than losing them. The point is to understand the dynamic so you can stop abandoning yourself inside of it. Because here's what usually happens when you get entangled with an avoidant. You meet them. There's an incredible pull, an intensity, a push-pull that feels addictive, like nothing you've ever experienced. They pull back. You panic. Your nervous system goes into full alarm mode because somewhere inside you, the withdrawal reads as danger. So you do what feels natural when you're scared of losing someone. You chase. You reach out more. You try harder. You do more. And they retreat further. And you chase harder. And in that cycle, that exhausting, demoralizing, self-erasing cycle, you lose yourself. Not all at once. Gradually, you become a version of yourself you barely recognize, anxious, hypervigilant, checking your phone every 5 minutes, analyzing every word of every text, replaying conversations trying to figure out where it went wrong, obsessive in a way that feels deeply unlike you, needy in a way that makes you ashamed of yourself. And here's what I need you to understand. That's not who you are. That is not your character. That is not your personality. That is who you become when you're in a dynamic that activates your deepest attachment wounds. When the push-pull mirrors something painful from your history. When the inconsistency triggers your nervous system in a way that makes calm, grounded behavior nearly impossible. It's a trauma response. It's an activated attachment system. It's not a moral failing. And understanding that, really understanding it, should bring you an enormous amount of compassion for yourself. You're not crazy. You're not pathetic. You're a human being with an attachment system that got activated by the wrong person. And now the work is to calm that system, to soothe it, to teach it that it's safe, not by chasing him, but by returning again and again to yourself. So understanding what avoidants notice, understanding what space feels like to them, what security feels like, what presence feels like, isn't about learning how to cater to them. It's about staying grounded in yourself regardless of what they do. It's about recognizing your own patterns so you can interrupt them before they take over. It's about seeing the cycle clearly enough that you can choose a different response. Not because changing your response guarantees a different outcome from them, but because you deserve to be someone who doesn't abandon themselves every time someone else pulls back. Let's get real about something else, because I think this is the part that actually sets people free. Not every avoidant is worth this effort. Let me say that again, because I want it to land. Not every avoidant is worth this effort. Some people are so deeply entrenched in their avoidance, so defended, so shut down, so committed to their emotional walls, that no amount of you being grounded or secure or patient or understanding will shift anything. That's not a reflection of your inadequacy. That's not proof that you're not enough. That is the reality of where they are in their journey. And that's okay. That is their journey to walk. Your journey is different. Your journey is to recognize when you're pouring yourself into something that isn't pouring back. To notice when space has turned into neglect. When slow has turned into stagnant. When maybe has quietly, insidiously turned into never. When waiting has become a way of life instead of a temporary stage. You can understand avoidant attachment and still have boundaries. You can give someone space and still expect consistent effort. You can be patient without being a doormat. You can be compassionate without being complicit in your own abandonment. Those things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they have to coexist if you want to build anything real and lasting and healthy. Because a relationship can't live on understanding alone. It requires both people doing the work. It requires both people choosing to show up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's vulnerable, even when every instinct screams to run. So yes, understand the attachment style. Give the space, hold the patience. But also, and this part is non-negotiable, notice what you notice. Notice how you feel after spending time with him. Not immediately after, not in the high of connection, but in the quiet afterward. Do you feel steady? Or do you feel like you're walking on glass? Do you feel seen? Or do you feel like you're always slightly out of reach of being fully known? Do you feel like the relationship is progressing? Slowly maybe, but genuinely moving forward? Or does it feel like you've been in the same holding pattern for months, for years, waiting for something to finally click into place? Notice whether he's doing his own work. Avoidant attachment doesn't have to be a life sentence. People can grow. People can become more secure. People can learn to tolerate intimacy and vulnerability with enough awareness and effort and willingness to change. The key word here is willingness. Is he aware of his patterns? Is he taking steps, however small, to change them? Is he showing up differently over time? Or is the avoidance constant, defended, something he either doesn't see or doesn't want to? Because there's a huge difference between someone who is avoidant but growing and someone who is avoidant and completely comfortable staying the same. Only one of those people is someone you can actually build something with. Pay attention to whether the relationship is truly progressing or if you've simply become an expert at managing his nervous system while neglecting your own. Constantly adjusting yourself so he doesn't feel pressured, crowded, or uncomfortable while your own needs stay unspoken and unmet is not intimacy. That is caretaking. And no healthy relationship can survive on that foundation. Here's the shift I want you to really sit with. Stop trying to be less emotional, less needy, less intense, less too much. So many people spend years shrinking themselves to fit into the comfort zone of someone who fears closeness. And in the process, they lose themselves. Instead of less, choose more. More of yourself, more honesty, more authenticity, Because the right person, the person truly capable of the kind of connection you want, won't see your need for closeness as neediness. They'll see it as emotional depth. They won't see your desire for communication as pressure. They'll see it as maturity and self-respect. They won't feel trapped by your presence. They'll feel grateful for it. They'll move toward you, not away from you. And if someone experiences your love as too much, your honesty as pressure, or your depth as suffocating, no amount of understanding their attachment style will magically transform them into someone emotionally available. No amount of patience, space, shrinking yourself, or pretending not to care will turn someone into what they are not ready to be. So use this information wisely. Use it for awareness, not self-abandonment. Stop blaming yourself every time someone pulls away, as if their distance proves your inadequacy. It doesn't. Sometimes their withdrawal reflects their limitations, not your worth. The most magnetic thing you can be is someone who truly knows their value. Not in a loud or performative way, but in a quiet, grounded way. Someone who can understand another person's wounds without losing themselves inside them. Someone who can say, I understand why you are the way you are, but this still isn't what I need. That energy changes everything. Because when you stop trying to crack the code of avoidant people and start coming home to yourself, something shifts. You stop shrinking. You stop chasing. You stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. And that is what secure, emotionally healthy people notice. Not perfection, not performance, just realness. Someone fully themselves, honest, grounded, and alive. So stop worrying so much about what he is noticing. Start paying attention to what you are noticing. Ask yourself what you truly want and whether this relationship can actually give it to you. Because the moment you stop making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you, everything changes.